It's great. 10 out of 10. No. It really is. It's like some of the most creative freedom I've ever felt in my career has been in animation.
Welcome to episode 5 of Panels and Pacing, an animation editing podcast. Today I'll be talking to Andy Young, who's worked on a number of Warner Brothers projects, notably Harley Quinn Season 3, the feature Merry Little Batman, for which he received an Emmy nomination, and Batfam. Andy and I first met at one of our regular animation editor mixers, and we later bonded over being nominated for Emmys at the same event.
Nominated and losing.
Yes, only for us to both lose in our respective categories. So, before we get into questions, have you recovered from your Emmy loss?
Barely. I think it made mine easier because I lost to a friend of mine, Kevin. And it's also, we were nominated for 2 Emmys that night. It was for mine and then for like basically Best Picture, and we lost both to Orion in the Dark. So when I saw we lost to Orion, I was like, oh, that feels like this isn't going to happen. So it's actually been better for me I just call myself an Emmy losing editor. And I have a deal with my friend who writes for Variety. Like if I get hit by a bus, she has to make the article Emmy losing editor. Andy Young. So I think I've gained
until you win the
I
next Emmy. Yeah.
At least I'm not a 2-time Emmy losing editor like some people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Both times. And that's one of the things of this being such a small, the animation editing world being such a small community. Both times I lost were to friends. And one was friends of my former company, and then the other one was someone that I was. The show was from a different company, but she was at my current company, and so like I knew her from that, and so
it softens the blow a little bit when it's like a homie of yours losing, and it really is like it's cheesy, but it is truly an honor to. I never thought doodling in high school that I would get nominated for anything, much less an Emmy. So it is like it's the having the plaque that says I lost is still cool.
Yeah, it's a feather in your bonnet, kind of. If that's I don't know if that's the right terminology, but
those bonnets that all of us animation editors wear.
Yes, back in the day when we were hand drawing, we were all wearing bonnets. I want to get started learning a little bit more about you because I feel like I'm not actually sure. I know kind of where you got your start and stuff. So yeah, how'd you get your start in entertainment and editing and stuff?
Oh gosh, in editing. I mean, I was always like the weird, quiet, creative kid in school, so I was always like drawing comics or writing songs, playing in bands, taking photos, like doing all the little things. And then it really clicked when I started like making movies, like sketches and stuff with my friends, specifically like opening iMovie and trying editing for the first time. I just had this like, whoa, this is all of it. This is like, I was never quite good at any of the actual making art, but I found I was really good at like juxtaposing all of the things together and getting the timing precise. And like, I was always too shy to be a performer, but getting to make something and see people watch it was so exciting to me. So soon after, I was originally going to go to the Berklee College of Music. I decided to go to film school instead. And I just kept kind of pursuing it. I kind of like most kids thought I'd like writer director was what I was chasing. But then I had this like epiphany on one of my shorts where I was like, I'm always like writing something just so I have something to direct, but really I'm always directing something so I have something to edit. I was just like, this is my favorite part of it. I just love like putting images together. Hours go by like minutes. And so I kind of had this thing a little bit after film school where I was just like, I think I'm just going to chase the thing I really like doing. So I just kept kind of like pursuing editing once I got out to LA. And that's kind of like the first like step of it. Like animation definitely came way later, but that was kind of like the falling into the editing side of things.
Nice. Yeah. What about getting into animation? Did you like kind of go for it, or do you?
So I moved out here in 2016, and I was always like a comedy editor. Like that was my bread and butter. I literally marketed myself as comedy editor. So I lost a lot of jobs, but then my resume went higher in certain piles because I was specific of loving to do comedy. So I was cutting it like, oh gosh, like College Humor, Funny or Die, Soul Pancake Crowd, like all these places that really don't exist anymore. But I was really like cutting my teeth and doing like editing. I was doing a big job on small things rather than most of my friends who kind of started by doing small stuff on big things. I was just always editing. And so by the time I got to like 2019, I'd really like worked my way up, and finally I had booked my first indie feature as an editor, and I had done a pilot for True TV that went really well. It tested great. They were like, this is the next Adam Ruins Everything. And I had this great meeting where they were like, you're going to be the lead editor on this big show. Your life's about to change. And that was March 7th, 2020. So they were right in a way. Pandy shuts everything down, new execs come in, the show gets canceled, and I'm kind of back to square one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to believe now, but like something kind of interesting happening during the pandemic where, all the live action stuff I was doing was not being made, but like animation was really thriving. Like
Yep.
it's hard to believe now, but like all the animation editors in town were booked. So suddenly, because I had so much comedy experience, I was getting interviews for like a lot of adult animated shows because that was a lot of my experience in network. So I was getting interviews for like Big Mouth and Tuca and Birdie, and like I think the closest one I got was like Lost Ollie. I was like suddenly interviewing with like one of the directors of Spider-Verse.
Right,
and then the big one I got was Harley Quinn, which that show I was already a huge fan of. Like September 2020 was not a great time for my mental health between the election and pandemic and canceling my wedding a second time. But then my friend Colin turned me on to this show, and it was just like, so like fun and punk rock and like weird, but also like sincere. And I like jumped on my couch when like this big thing happened in season 2. So suddenly I got this opportunity to get to interview for it. And I kept thinking like, oh, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get this. Like there's so many other people who like know what animation editing is. And then I ended up being the first person hired on to season 3.
Wow.
So that was kind of how I kind of fell into animation editing.
Right.
Like I really didn't know. It's so weird, like how naive I was at the time. Like I didn't even really think that animation had editors. I kind of just assumed it was like, I don't know, there were like a version of it, but like timers, or like I thought like you cut the animatics and then like the movie comes back. Like I just had all these misconceptions before I started cutting in animation. But then it was like, and I was so nervous about doing it the first time because I had never cut anything with animation before. But then it was like how universal it is. It just felt like cutting any other comedy stuff I'd ever done before. It's like, but your footage is boards, and it's like, but really it was like once I started, the first scene I cut was in the first episode of season 3, and it's like a comedic scene with Commissioner Gordon. And it was like, this is my bread and butter. So it's like, once I started doing that, then it's like when we got into the fight scenes and the bigger iconic stuff, like that felt a little more like tangible because I was able to start from like the thing I knew really well, which was comedy. And then a lot of the actual things, the minutia of animation editing, I kind of figured out on my own. I did a lot of stuff I think wrong, but worked for me. Like, for example, a thing us animation editors do a lot is we do temp voices before we get like our big fancy celebrity people. No one told me I could just read stuff. So I would like do my Clayface or my King Shark, or like I would like do like the voices. I would really commit, even though I wasn't good at it. But like the showrunners really liked it. It really kind of revitalized them on like, oh, someone really cares about the show. That, or like I think there's like 2 kind of camps of animation editors where some will just like, here's the boards, we'll do all the music sound effects later. I'm very much the opposite. I come from comedy where it's like so much of that is reliant on music and sound effects. So I would really like spend a really long time, like really like, like fully doing like a score from like other movies, or I would like, do a full pass of sound effects to make it like as dope as possible, making something that is inherently rough of an animatic, like feel as finished as possible. And so like I did a lot of stuff I think wrong, but it ended up like making me better at it and making me more attractive to people as I started like moving farther into the animation side of things.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring up the kind of scoring and sound design stuff, because that did come up with one of my last guests about how and I'm kind of in the same camp, especially with maybe like first seasons of shows or things where the people that you're trying to get to approve the final episode may not be as used to seeing an animatic as maybe they came from live action, they're used to seeing live action stuff, or
they're just an executive, so they need
you're kind of the sense of like some executives aren't used to it. So even if it is quote unquote like temp at a certain stretch during animatics,
like I know it's all going to get thrown out, but it all like leads towards like finding. Especially, I'm glad you said it, because it's like Harley, I got to cheat a little bit because it was season 3 of the show, so it's like we had this whole back catalog of score, which I knew really well. It kind of had like a tone that was set in by like Chuck Rainer and like Andy DeBrock and like James Atkinson and all these great editors that came before me on the show. But then when I did Merry Little Batman and Batfam, it was like I was kind of like setting the tone for everything. And I think like those definitely feel a lot more like my voice as an editor. But it was like totally different beast of like, oh, you're not just like starting from this. It was so much easier to come in on like a season 3 of a show than like, okay, you're creating the thing from the ground up. It's like stylistically, tone, pacing, all that stuff,
Yeah.
So I definitely got to ease into it with like the season 3 of Harley.
Yeah, same. When I was on Animals, which was one of my first start to finish animatic to final picture editing jobs. Yeah, that was also season 3. So like picking score, we were like using the back catalog from the previous 2 seasons, and Phil and Mike, the creators, would be like, there was this cue from episode 2 or whatever, like let's try to use that, and they were totally fine with like reusing stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And talking to the music editors afterward, they were like, oh, having you do that was super helpful to us because the composer didn't have to write new stuff. Music editor could just be like, oh, they're using that cue. Maybe they like swapped it out with their higher quality one or whatever. But like all they, it was just a swap. They didn't have to like recut anything or whatever. Or they just used, what I gave them.
Oh yeah,
So
well, I
kind of
think
like really
composers
helped.
can appreciate it too, though, because like that was the experience I had on Harley. Of like I used a lot of score when I could, but then I would also use like a Run the Jewels instrumental or like a
Mm-hmm.
My Hero Academia score or something when it was like something I wanted to try different. But then when we got to the movie, I scored the. It's a bummer no one will hear it. You and I, we work so hard on doing these temp scores, and then they don't exist. But like
Mm-hmm.
we had a full wall to wall like temp score from all these different movies for Merry Little Batman, and then when we got our incredible composer Patrick Stump. I was like, okay, well, he's a big rock star. He's not going to want to use this at all. And he was actually really stoked on it. He was like, okay, I kind of see the vibe of what you're going through for all these. I'm not going to like one-to-one this, but this does kind of like help me get into a blueprint of like, this is the director's voice through music. And this is like what we've been working on for years. And it made spotting like way easier too, of Mike to just be able to be like, okay, yeah, we want like this kind of vibe, this thing, this stuff. And it was where I started, as a musician, and it kind of like is where it's kind of come in to know like musicality of like, I want something to have like a minor key kind of feel, or I want to be able to pull from like this score I heard 20 years ago that my
Mm-hmm.
weird memory can kind of latch onto. It's like being able to like build those things. I think it is more often like helpful because it's a way of like expressing what you want before you have the tools to do it. It's the same as with, sound effects and everything like that, of just like, I know it's all going to get taken out, but that's like an animatic is inherently rough. And like what you and I do is we're kind of like the nucleus of the project. We're like we're the draft table for all the other artists
Mm-hmm.
to come through and be like, okay, this is what we're doing here. And just to like all unify on the artistic vision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like temp score, especially in comedy, where comedy, a lot of times you're satirizing or you're borrowing genre cliches and turning it on its head.
Very much
And
so.
sometimes, even just hitting a temp score on the head with like, yeah, this is Mission Impossible, and using that, you know, that might be a little too on the nose for the particular thing, but like we did that in Mira
Oh, sure.
on Mira Royal Detective. We did like and what we did season 1, we found a lot of like sitar or Bollywood style covers of popular songs. So we had like a sitar cover of Mission of the Mission Impossible theme, and we had like this big train chase thing, and that was the temp score. Of course, they Amrita, the composer, like went almost pretty much a totally different direction with,
Oh,
with all
sure.
of it, and ended up making it feel like a Disney show and stuff. But yeah, there was this like
But it's still fun to get like the vibe and excitement and like tone of it. Because
yeah.
I've definitely done a lot of that. Of like I would look up like like piano covers of Radiohead songs or something like that. Of just like I want it to feel like this, but to be like this version of that.
Yeah.
But also there was, I will say, like there was one. Patrick nailed it. Like we love his score. He's such a badass. But then there was one cue we really like in the movie where like Commissioner Gordon opens like the blinds and it's like chaos outside. We were using the Uruk-hai theme from Lord of the Rings. And we did explore like, well, we're a Warner Brothers thing. That was a Warner Brothers thing. Can't we just, come on? And they were like, absolutely not. And like Patrick's thing is really good, but it's like if you play the Uruk-hai theme with it, it just makes me laugh every time. So
yeah, it's a fun part of the process. We can talk about music later because
sure.
I know you mentioned it, but like having any kind of musical background or even just kind of having any familiarity with film scores or just the kind of the vibe that music can bring to a scene, and just being able to get to play with it and just kind of feel like, is this the right thing? No, this feels a little bit off or whatever, and it can really help to dictate how a scene feels when you're putting it all together.
But there's also the times where it's like you use temp store and it does work. Like again, like for Merry Little Batman, it is like a very soundtrack heavy movie, and I actually got to get like two of my favorite bands into it because I just like tried them out in the temp thing, and then like Mike fell in love with them, and we're like, okay, let's like chase this. Let's like see if we can just use this like punk rock Christmas song, and then it was like all of a sudden like we're hearing from the Vandals that they love it, and it's just like so I don't know. You never know. Sometimes stuff makes it in, and it's amazing.
Of all these ones that you've talked about, your previous projects, is there one that you've like considered a favorite or a combination? Or
I think it's got to be Merry Little Batman. Like it's so funny with that one because like the way I got Batman, so it's like I did Harley and I didn't get invited for season 4 because it was like one of the original editors came back and it was suddenly a thing of like we have 3 editors, we only need 2. and you only have like 6 months of experience with us. But Warner Brothers wanted to keep me around, so I was doing interviews for other gigs, and one of them was like this children's animated Batman movie. In my head, I was like, oh, I just did this like hip, cool, like adult show. I don't know if I want to do like, I've done a Christmas movie before. I don't know if I want to do that again. But I saw it was with Mike Roth, who is like an animation legend. He was like one of the OG board artists on SpongeBob. He was right hand man on a regular show. And I knew I was up against all these like, older like editors in like Hawaiian shirts or whatever. So I was just like, I'm just gonna like talk to this guy for like 20 minutes, and it's just like it'll be a fun story, and then I'll continue my career back into live action. I really thought like animation would just be a fun kind of pit stop. But then we had a great interview for it, and I saw the art style, and it has this like Ron Searle Roald Dahl kind of thing, and it had this kind of like punk rock like kind of like grit to it in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I don't know, I really vibed with Mike, but I told him kind of the stuff I just said, and he was like, take the weekend to think about it. I really like your vibe. I think you'd be perfect for this. And it happened to be my wedding weekend, so I didn't really think about it, except for there was a moment where I was dancing with my niece Rosa, who I think was like 6 at the time, and seeing my twin nephews Fabian and Aiden kind of mess around with each other. And I just had this like epiphany of like, oh, I've never made anything you guys can watch. Like all of my career up into this point had been like either adult animation or adult live action with like cursing and stuff. So it's like anytime I visited them, my niece didn't believe me that I worked on movies because I couldn't show her anything. And I had this thing of like, oh my God, like The Iron Giant's my favorite movie. Did I just turn down like a Warner Brothers animated children's film? And so like, like 2 days after my wedding, I got off a plane. I called Mike and I'm like, let's make a movie. And it is like, it's one of those where I was just like, it's the first thing where I was through the process the whole time. I didn't do color on Harley. I got to like, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, but I think Mike told me later he hired me because I had live action experience and he wanted someone that thought like a live action editor. So I did a lot of stuff that you generally, like he was taught not to do, like J&L, like he was big against J&L cuts for when we first started working together. Or he was really like, it was kind of a similar thing of like, I said no to a lot of stuff, I think is why I'm also kind of proud of the project. Cause like I think all the other editors who I was up against were like, yeah, I'll do whatever. Absolutely. Yeah. Whatever the producers want. But like producers were like, well, we're thinking of cutting the whole thing in Storyboard Pro. And I was like, that's not an editing software. I'll cut in Premiere or Avid, but I'm not going to cut in Storyboard Pro. And they were like, well, we don't, we just need like these like quick things. We don't need temp music and sound effects. I'm like, that's how you sell jokes. If I'm doing it, it's going to be a full thing. Like I kept giving Mike reasons to say no to me.
Right.
And I didn't realize at the time that it was because I was like being specific on what I wanted. He knew he would have like an ally in the editing thing.
Right.
So I ended up getting it. And I think the reason I picked that one as my favorite one is because it is like the most my voice, I think, of something I've made. Like for the movie, I think it is like 95% the film I wanted to make, which for a studio film is kind of bonkers.
Yeah.
So it's like I really don't rewatch a lot of my work, but I think partly because it's a Christmas movie, partly because my niece and nephews, I'll tell them I made it for them and it's true. So anytime I visit them, they want to put it on. And it's like, I still have like, the movie really holds up to me. And it's like, it has a lot of my voice. There's probably, there's things I like and dislike about all of my work I've ever done in animation or live action. But I think Batman's the closest one to where it's like, I was on it 2 years. It's really my voice. It's really what I'm proud of what I can do as an editor. And I learned so much from it. And it is, the one that I lost an Emmy for. So I think like there's part of that too. And it's like saying that my favorite thing I've done is like a children's animated Batman movie would have made my probably film school self bristle a little bit, but I'm so proud of it. It's one of those movies I wish I could have watched when I was a kid.
Nice. Yeah, that was interesting because when I made the jump into working in really, this is when I was doing preschool stuff. I had an interview. So when it was right before I accepted working on Mira, Royal Detective. So I had that interview. And then I had also interviewed at Warner Brothers for like a Teen Titans VOD kind of thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Mary Lou Batman. I was like, oh no.
No. This was 2018.
Sure. Okay, yeah. Oh, was it the Teen Titan versus the Teen Titans thing?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was really hoping that I would get the Warner Brothers thing because that to me was something like being at Warner Brothers and animation and stuff like that. Just like felt like the kind of like, oh, that's the next step. Like,
Oh, sure.
And I was a little bit unsure if I wanted to be working in kids entertainment. And my oldest son at the time that I was interviewing was like 6 months old. And so like, I didn't really kind of connect the, like, if I make kids entertainment, it's something that he can watch.
Right.
Until in the interview at Wild Canary for Mira, they were like, oh, then when this comes out, your son will be right within the age range. Because it was like, a year and a half of doing animatics and then picture, and then when it was
exactly
air date, and then I was like, oh, that's interesting. It also happens that air date was March 16th of 2020 or that week.
So
And
just
so
focus
it
on
was
this.
like, yeah,
But that is where a lot of
none
it
of that
comes
was in
from.
the
It's like
Bible.
when you connect it to your own personal life of just like getting reminded of that when like, especially with like, I think it was more, well, Harley, I got like a lot of like teenagers because I'm so vocal online. I got teenagers messaging me saying it helped them come out. And it's like, that's the coolest shit ever. But
Nice.
then it's like, for the movie, it's like the parents telling me like their kids loved it or their kids were scared of it or their kids laughed a lot or their kids watched it 40 times or they dress up or they draw stuff or whatever. It's like, that's the coolest thing because that's what I did when I was a kid, you know? So it's like to get to kind of keep pushing that boulder is kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's especially seeing firsthand, like sometimes kids will just like they have so many options and then they'll just kind of like latch on to like a couple handful of properties or a couple movies or
Oh,
whatever that they'll
especially
just
now,
watch
yeah.
over and over and over again. And so like to have something that is somebody's over and over and over choice is probably pretty fulfilling.
Oh, it's the best. It's
Yeah.
like I've been in a place now where I've gotten to tell like some of the filmmakers who made my things for that, like the Brave Little Toaster, Iron Giant, or whatever. You
Hmm.
tell them like, hey, I've watched this like minimum 100 times, and it's like it's cool to see them see that like decades later, thinking like this was what it was at the time or whatever, and then it's like for them to be like, oh yeah, like especially Iron Giant. I've met so many artists over the years that have worked on it, and they were like, that was my first job, and it was a scrappy thing, and it's like it's cool. It's got to be cool to have like something of that level, to be like that it's like inspired people to do what you and I do. It's like it's got to feel really nice.
Yeah, one of the things that I've loved about working in this industry is just kind of running into someone who's just like, I was on the first seasons of SpongeBob, or I did like I talked to
Bro.
David Fain last week. That was
Oh no way.
he did Action League Now and Kablam and that was just like, and he did all the stop motion and all that kind of stuff. And I was telling him, I was just like, yeah, I love just kind of bragging to my friends that aren't in the industry that watch this, that I was like, yeah, I know that guy is a friend.
Oh yeah.
I did it. Yeah.
I can't talk about it too much yet, but I did something recently. I went back to Warner Brothers for a second, and we got like a couple notes from James Gunn and stuff. And it was like for me, it was like, oh my god, like you did Romeo and Juliet. It was just like, or yeah, I guess he was on Harley too. Like that was cool as well. But it's like, yeah, getting to like intersect with like these people who like did all this cool stuff to you, and getting to just be like, oh wow, it's now like we're working together is like so cool.
Yeah. Do you have anyone who's kind of been like an idol or a mentor through your career? Or?
Oh, so many. I mean, like when I first started, like there's this great comedy editor named David Ward who lives in Austin, and he really took me under his wing. I was an intern for his company that they don't exist anymore, but at the time they were Rafe Smith Entertainment, and they were doing this movie that was called Intramural, and the cast was like Kate McKinnon. This is all people before they were famous. Kate McKinnon, Beck Bennett, Jay Farrow, Britannic, Nick Rutherford, Jake Lacey, like all Gabe Luna is like all these like people who I was a huge fan of because I was a massive comedy nerd, and just knowing like it's the closest I can imagine to like being on Wet Hot American Summer, but getting to be on that movie and like learning everything about how movies are made, and then getting to like sit with Dave and like watch him edit and see how he made choices was really big for me. And then when I moved to LA, there was this guy, Neil Mahoney, sadly no longer with us, but he was an editor of like Key and Peele, Drunk History. He was actually on The Life and Times of Tim, which is one of my favorite animated shows of all time. And he was really a big one of just like, he kind of taught me of like coming out to LA of like how you can be a really great mentor for someone, of just like, we had like, I asked him out for coffee and he answered all my questions, but then he just kind of stayed in touch on his own, which has not really happened to me since then, where he was just like, he was asking like how I was doing, what I was working on. He would put me up for stuff he couldn't do. He would introduce me to like producers and directors to try to raise my career. He was always like super sweet when he like came across something I edited that he dug. And that was like really amazing. And when he passed, it was devastating. And I spent like the week crying with other like editors and assistant editors he changed. And I was grateful I got to go to the wake. And it was just kind of like, oh, this is how I should live my life. Of someone like that. But Neil was like a really big deal. He taught me a lot, not just of like how to edit creatively, but he was the big proponent of me. He helped me get rostered and was like, you got to join the union.
Mm-hmm.
And so he really taught me not just like how to run an edit bay creatively, but how to run one where you're making sure everyone is taken care of, no one is taken advantage of, making sure you're standing up for people. That was really like the older I get, the biggest impact I think Neil had on me. I don't know. Idols is always weird for editors because it's like we're supposed to be invisible. But I got to be a mentor at South by Southwest this year. They only have like 2 editors do it every year, and it was me and Sandra Adair. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, she's, with like 2 exceptions, edited every single Richard Linklater movie. To
Okay.
me, like she should be in the same conversation as like Thelma Shoemaker. Like I think she's one
Mm-hmm.
of the greatest editors of all time. And we'd been friendly like for years, and then we got coffee like beforehand, and it was really cool getting to ask her about like all these like amazing projects she's done over the years, not just for Rick, but like her IMDb is insane. But then it was like the way, I don't think she'd mind me saying this. It's like the way she was talking, like she'd be like, "Oh, I don't know where my next job's going to come from," or like, "Oh, I'm like trying to crack this scene with a director and we're struggling with it right now," or "Oh, like the industry, I don't know where it's going and stuff." And it was kind of crazy to see this person who's like an Oscar nominee. She made like Before Sunset and School of Rock in the same year. Like her legacy is good, but she has all the same like anxieties and like fights and like creative like yearning that I do. It was like really inspiring to see someone who's like, in my opinion, top 10, one of the best that's ever going to do it, to have like the same feelings that people like you and I do was really cool. So it's
Mm-hmm.
something I really like about like you doing this podcast, of just like making it a more tangible thing. Because like before in my career, I there weren't really things like this for editors. So I didn't know like if I felt like alone in things or like how stuff worked. And then it's like getting to hear now, like my friends do stuff like this, but like getting to see like, oh, it's all tangible. We're all kind of going to the same thing. And if like all of us are crazy, then none of us are.
Yeah.
It makes it feel so much more universal and stuff. So it's like, I've been very blessed to have like a lot of great mentors over the years, but like the older I get and farther along in my career, the cooler thing has been to get to be a mentor at any step I can, whether it's like specifically through my union or my school, or to be able to like just go out on my own, like see someone who I think is really talented and be like, "Hey, let me help you get rostered," kind of like what Neil did for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's been, I think that's been like more rewarding. I don't know if you've had that similar thing where it's just like getting to see like my friend's name as an assistant editor in the credits, which wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for me. That's kind of cooler than like me getting like an Emmy nomination or something, because it's like helping someone else. Like that's the stuff that really like excites me about getting to be a mentor that like Dave or Neil or Sandra was for me.
Yeah, Luke and I in the first episode kind of talked a lot about like establishing a educational kind of regimen, and then me kind of seeing that and paying it forward.
Yeah,
So
kind of trying to work it into like, now that we've made it, we kind of have to bring the ladder down.
yeah, this person did this for me, so that's kind of how I know to work. And sometimes the job gets too crazy, and the educational part has to take a step back to
Mm-hmm.
to just the main creative goals. But
If someone is listening to specifically an animation editing podcast, if that's you right now, DM me, like email me. You've done the work. Like if you specifically want to do this, like find my email and I'll get back to you. It's like, because that's someone who wants it. And I think that's
yeah,
the thing for me, is like the older I get, it's like when Neil passed, it kind of led to me weirdly getting Harley Quinn in a way. So I kind of made this like deal when I got that job of just like, okay, well, I'm going to like pick up where Neil left off. I'm going to just like answer every email. I'm going to help everyone I can. And it's like, I really put the elbow grease in when it's someone who's like us, where it's just like my bone marrow will disintegrate if I don't edit animation.
yeah,
It's just like, that's the kind of like so specific of a person that clearly has a goal. It's like, all right, if you're good at this and you're kind, it's like you just need a little push in the right direction. I'm always happy to help with that.
yeah.
Another animation editor kind of said this to me the other day. They're like, I feel like we're like the last people to get on the helicopter in Vietnam, because it's like I got in during COVID, where it was like there was so much animation getting made, and now we're at a place where it's like the industry is contracting and there's less stuff getting made and like things merging, and it's a really scary time. And it's like, it's kind of like before I had all these, I could get someone to intern for this place or assistant for this person, and now it's like a lot of those jobs don't exist anymore. So it's a really scary time to get in the industry. And I've had people say like, should I actually do this, or is this crazy? So it's like, if you really want to do this, I don't know. It's kind of that Seinfeld thing, right? Where it's like, if supposedly like he like comics would be like, what advice do you have for me? And you'd be like, don't do this. I'm not mean enough to do that, but I do have this feeling of like, if you really want to do this, nothing I say is going to dissuade you from it.
Right.
So I think like, to me, it's like now I tell people to give themselves the hard conversation of like, how bad do you want this? Because it is a tangible goal. It is like, it's a 9 to 5. It's like, it's a job that like you can like practice at, study at, get good at, and then like network your way into. Like it really isn't, the bar isn't as like spooky high as people seem to think it is. It's certainly not like trying to be an actor or a director or whatever. We're still in a place where the cream rises to the crop. And if you look historically at the film industry, not just like the last 20 years, the last 100 years, there's always like a bit of a contraction towards this new thing, opens back up again when they realize like, oh, the audience wants spectacle, the audience wants storytelling, the audience wants professional like told stuff. It's weird, like kind of backwards advice, but it's just, you kind of just have to listen to yourself and just be like, how bad do I want this? And if the answer is you want it a lot, keep pushing for it. Life's too short to do something that you only kind of want to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of feel like a lot of the people that you talk to or you hear their career stories always kind of talk about the push to just like create, and whether there are jobs available or not, if you're that type of person, you're still going to have the push to create.
Oh yeah.
And so you may not be able to get a job doing it right away, but if you keep working at the craft outside of Hollywood, the digital landscape, YouTube and whatever, the social media landscape is flush with anything that you can find, not even just like channels that you can edit for,
Oh yeah,
or
there's
just
like in
like
a weird way, there's so much more work than there was when you and I got started.
yeah, yeah. And again, I'll kind of briefly mention union stuff. Like not a lot of that stuff is union covered, and you may not get great compensation for or comparable compensation for working in TV or film. But like if you're just starting out and you just want like reps,
Oh yeah.
if you want to be able
You
to
want to cut
do
your teeth,
the
you want to get the stuff. That
yeah
was actually like some of the best advice I ever got was from I used to write for Movie Maker magazine. I got to interview Sean Baker. This was like between Florida Project and Tangerine. And it was interviewing him just about editing, which was really fascinating. Now more obviously, but the big advice he gave me, because I was kind of in this place of like, oh, I'm just editing like all this like wedding stuff and like corporate stuff, and I'm like, I'm not like I'm making decent amount. And he was like, well, are you cutting like shorts and like fun stuff on the side? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, that's what you need to be doing, because that's what I did. Like, and the biggest thing is like, even when you're doing those boring jobs, like use them as a learning exercise. Like he told me about like he would cut like all the same bullshit, like corporate, wedding, whatever, boring stuff. But he would be like, okay, I'm gonna like teach myself how to like color correct a bit or mix or like try to tell this in like three shots instead of five. Even when you're doing the boring stuff, you can like train yourself through it.
yeah
And he was also like, a lot of the people I met through those jobs, people that you meet on corporate jobs, they also want to do cool stuff. So it's like, always have a good attitude, always like be the person people want to work with, because then when people level up, they remember you like being
yeah
cool to work with. So like, it's the thing, like, I think that's advice that like I wish more people had. I have this story of like when the first time I was in the editor chair on a TV show. It was kind of small, but I did have an assistant, and he was like, I was young. I was like 24, 25, and he was like later 40s, and we were sharing an office, and he was mumbling like angry things about me the whole time, where he's like, oh, I can't believe this kid's getting the thing. I haven't gotten my shot. This is ridiculous, doing this stuff. And he was like, anytime I asked him to do something, he would roll his eyes, and it was all this stuff. And then it was like a nightmare to work with him. And then after the show, he sent me this email of just like, hey, please consider me if you need a co-editor. And I was like, in my head, I was like, fuck no. If you're that kind of person, no wonder you're still assistant editing at this age, because no one wants to work with you. So like so much of like what's important about what you and I do is like the attitude. Like we really are like, we set the tone in the edit bay, making the edit bay a playground, a place to like experiment and try stuff. And it's like, I never say like, whenever people want to try something, even I know it's not going to work, always try it, always see what it is. And then anytime directors like apologize, like, oh, that was dumb, I'm like, this is why we're here. I need to get a sign that says that, like, this is why we're here. We're here to create, So it's like so much of it is like attitude that like really, when I think of what gets me hired or other of my friends hired, like people don't ask like, are they talented? What shows they've done? They're like, do they smell good? And are they cool to work with? That's like, if you can do those things, you're already so much farther away than like a lot of your competition.
yeah. So much of what you might learn in school is just the like, how do you do an L cut? The strategy of like starting with a wide and going close and tight or whatever. And I know those specific examples.
And not enough
really
of like, what's an invoice?
Yeah, but just the stuff that you really can't teach in school is the running the room stuff. And again, this doesn't just apply to editing. This probably can apply to every kind of job. Maybe not certain types of jobs where being an asshole is looked at as a good thing, but like,
which there are some of those in Hollywood.
Right, yeah. But any kind of creative job where you're collaborating with people, and especially if you are a craftsperson executing someone else's vision, you don't want to be the person that doesn't enthusiastically do something that they're asking you to do.
Yeah.
Or putting up a wall saying like, I see what you're trying to do and I think it's a stupid idea and I'm not going to do it. Again, like do what you said. Like, you may think like this is probably going to be weird, and then do it and maybe it is weird. But like
but then there's other times where you're wrong. I'm curious if you have. I have a system. I call it like the 2-time rule, where basically I did this a lot. I worked with Mike for 4 years, so like, and he got to know it without me saying it at a certain point. But I was like, and we tried something he did that I didn't like. I would bring it up once. I'd be like, hey, I don't know if this is like the right way to go. And he was like, well, I like this. And I was like, all right. And then if it was like it didn't matter that much to me, I wouldn't bring it up again. I'd just be like, all right, you're the director, whatever. If it was still bugging me like 2 or 3 days later, like still in the cut, I would be like, I really don't think this is working. He's like, I like it. This is staying in. And then I never bring it up again. Because at the end of the day, it is his movie. Like, we are getting hired to, like, we're not button pushers. Like, if we work with directors who are really good, they want us to bring our taste and our sensibility. But the director's job is to, like, channel all these like different artistic voices and still be the masthead of like what really works. So
yeah,
I don't do it a lot. Like, there are like, it's really like once I'm comfortable with a collaborator, I'll really bring my voice of like, are we sure about this, or can we try like this maybe? And Mike was again like great on the other side of it, where he'd like think for a second and be like, try it, and then I would because it's easier to build something than to like explain it. And then he would either be like, yeah, that actually works, let's put it in. Or he'd be like, no, I don't like that. And it's like, all right, well, that's it. Like, sometimes kids will ask me, like, what do you do if, like, you don't agree with a note? And I'm like, well, you do the note. It's just that's our job, And it's like, you don't have to agree with it. You still have to try to make, like, the best possible thing, But that's, like, the whole game is, like, taking a lot of notes that sometimes don't make sense or don't work and, trying to find the quote-unquote note within the note,
I think a lot about where the editor is on the kind of totem pole, the hierarchy of creatives. And I personally come from and present myself from a kind of humble perspective. So I'll sometimes kind of introduce an opinion, but kind of like caveat that like, I know I'm not, I'm not like high up on the totem pole for this decision, but like, this is just my opinion on this thing.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna take it or leave it. So, and I feel like whether or not that opinion gets taken into account or whatever, I feel like people appreciate the like, this person doesn't think that they're making the main decisions on the show more than anyone else who's at a higher pay rate, whose show it is or whatever.
Yeah, we're in the cabinet. Like, I watch West Wing like every year, and I'm always just like, I'm Josh Lyman, you're President Bartlett, and it's like, what you say goes. I'm here to advise,
Yeah.
And like, you're not going to take all of my decisions, but you clearly have me here because you believe in my style, and like you think that I'm good at what I do.
Yeah, I know we already talked about music a little bit, but I've been asking people what their outside hobbies are, and music's one of yours. Do you want to go more into music, or do you want to
interesting. It's like else? Once I finished, I still like play a little bit, but it's like once I finished like all the Berkeley stuff, I was like, it made like music not fun for a while, like doing stuff at that level. So it's like I have guitars and I'll still like play for fun and stuff. I think for me to like unwind, I do like, I love going to the movies, especially like repertoire cinema. I'm a huge cinephile. I love playing video games, but the older I get, the more I'm trying to get away from those as my hobbies, because it's not healthy to like just make cartoons and then just go watch cartoons. That can be you don't really learn a lot from that. So weirdly, I had this experience recently. I went to Sundance, and it's a higher elevation, so I was getting like exhausted a lot, but I was like, okay, I feel like I should go see the doctor. And then like I did all these like tests and stuff, and I realized I am getting dangerously close to the same age and weight of Homer Simpson. Like I to me, I don't think I'm that skinny, but at the time I was like, I just turned 35. I was like 235 pounds. And I looked it up, like canonically Homer Simpson is 240 pounds. So I was like, oh, something's got to change. So like a big kind of hobby I have now is like exercising, which is something I should have found way sooner. Cause it's like at the, in my 20s, I was skinny as a rail. I could eat like a bag of Cheetos and nothing would happen. And now as I get older, it's like everything hits. At first, like I started exercising in February, and it felt more like, okay, this is something I get through. I'll put on a podcast, TV show, and just like barrel through it. And now I'm trying to really like appreciate the time. Like I do, you and I, we have a very sedentary lifestyle, and it's like that can really, the older we get, it really starts to like, compound. So it's like, I've been going for more like jogs, trying to do like, weight training and stuff like that. And there's something about like getting exhausted, but in a good way. Like once you stick with it for a couple months, it feels like amazing to like run for half an hour and just kind of like let your brain wander. And it's like, it's been a way, if I'm stuck on a project or something, if I go for a jog, I'll come back and I'll be like, oh, that's what we should do. Cause it's like, you're moving and like endorphins are running and everything. And it's just like, so I think weirdly, like a big hobby of mine has kind of been just trying to be more active in exercise, especially just trying to offset like this lifestyle, like that you and I chose, while also just like, there is like a freedom to it that it's like, I don't dread going to the gym anymore. Now I kind of enjoy it. So it's like, I know that's probably kind of a weird one. But it's just when I think of how I'm trying to spend my free time more, it's like, I'm trying to get away from things where I'm sitting on the couch and towards things where I'm a little more active.
That is important because, yeah, again, dipping a little bit back into what we were talking about with advice, like, yeah, this is a very sedentary job. I mean, even this like getting a standing desk if you can afford one, or allotted one at a job.
Something that's really helped me, because I used to have this thing where I would edit for like, like 5, maybe even 8 hours in a sit, and then just wait, like snap out of it and be like, oh, I haven't eaten today.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have like timers on my phone. It's different when I'm in a session, obviously, but if I'm just like building something or I'm doing notes by myself, I have to set timers where I'm like, okay, I will like work for 45 minutes and do nothing but like stare at the screen, and then like for like 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, I will like go outside, or I'll chill with my cats, or I will like do something else outside of it.
Yeah.
When I was at Warner Brothers, it's such a beautiful campus. Like I would just kind of go explore, and then I would just like go look into rooms until people kicked me out of them. Same with like just going onto the lot. Like I would just like watch takes of like the pit or whatever, and then just be like, all right, well now I'll go back and I'll feel a little inspired to go make shit. You know, at the end of the day, this is just a job. I think that's the big thing. And Neil tried to tell me that. I didn't really like appreciate it until after he passed, unfortunately. But like, it's just a job at the end of the day. What's important is like how you live your life and spend your life. And it was really at Neil's wake where I was like, oh, I can't just like, editing can't be my only thing. I love my job. You and I are so lucky to do what we do. But the older I get, the more it's like I got to prioritize, like, spending time with my wife, connecting with my family, making friends, and all the other stuff that is like the things that we'll really miss when we're, thinking back on all of this noise.
Yeah, advocating for what you bring to a creative job, but also advocating for your personal time and your well-being and your mental health and your physical health. And I always like pointing out that like as an editor that's a parent of young kids, advocating for like, hey, I'm all for working on this job. I have some time constraints where I need to leave at this time to go pick up my kid. I will give you 8 to 5 or whatever instead of 9 to 6 or whatever, 10 to 7. Or I will just like make sure that I am very efficient with the time that I am sitting at the desk. And the last few years and the last few shows, I've been able to do my job when still leaving at like, at like keeping banker's hours, as they say, which is oftentimes looked down upon in Hollywood. People will expect that everyone's gung ho to sit and work for 12 hours a day. And one of the things, I mean, I think this is a little more true for animation than in live action editing, but like one of the things that I've really found about the animation world is that the work-life balance has been a lot more achievable than the stories that I hear from friends and other people in the network that are just like, working 10, 12-hour days. And, oftentimes that's schedule-based where you shoot a show and it's got to air in 2 months. In animation, there's a natural stretch where the animation gets done and you're not doing anything actively editing wise, and that takes weeks.
It's honestly one of my favorite parts of working in animation, because like I was one of the only crew heads that didn't have kids on my last show, and it was great because it was like they would just be things of just like, look, we can edit on all this, but like at 6 o'clock I got soccer practice, and there's nothing so catastrophic and important that it can't wait till Monday morning 9 a.m. I had to like kind of set that boundary. And to Mike's credit, he was like very cool about it, very supportive about it. And it kind of kept going through the show as well. And it's like, it's amazing when you have a boss like that really understands that. It's like the best directors I've worked with know that. And it's like, again, he has 3 kids. So it's like for him more than anyone, that's the more important stuff. And you see the people who don't prioritize that, and it really bites them in the butt, if not now, later, So it's just like, it's important to prioritize your family, prioritize your relationships, even when it's scary and hard, even when it feels like this will quote unquote ding your career.
Yeah.
I speak a lot about like union stuff or, like workers' rights and all this stuff. If someone seeing that decides they don't want to work with me because of that, that's probably not someone I want to work with. And that's made it a little easier for me to speak out and say, like, this is an important conversation to have. And we're all often dissuaded from having it. Of just like, what's workers' rights? What is, makes this a sustainable lifestyle and not a hobby for what we do for a living, what we're really good at. So it's important to make sure we're like taking care of ourselves, taking care of our family, while also, doing our best work. But like you said, it's like adjusting hours and just making sure that like, as long as you're like vocal and transparent with people, I think nowadays transparency seems to be much more appreciated than trying to just like bare your teeth and grin it, or grit your teeth and bear it, rather.
Yeah. And I think the union stuff, which we don't need to get fully on, but I think that like that stuff helps lay ground rules for what an expected hours of the day and hours of the week, and like lunch breaks and stuff like that, where like if you're working through lunch, then like you gotta advocate for yourself, being like, hey, you didn't give me a lunch break, like that you gotta pay me extra money for that.
I've carried it on to my non-union jobs now. Again, at the time, like I would just like work straight through. Yeah, it teaches you how to like, advocate for yourself, advocate, and not just for yourself, again, advocate for your assistants, advocate for other people on your team, just like if
Yeah.
I'm putting my foot down and be like, look, I'm taking a 30-minute break at 1. If you want to touch the keyboard, that's you, man. But it's like, I have to eat.
Yeah.
I'm a human being,
Right.
and it's just
Yeah.
like, if you will stick down, it can be really hard to do. But there is also a part of it of just like, you and I are like, straight white dudes. And it's like, there are less consequences for us advocating for ourselves and for our crew than for other people. So it's like important to do that kind of stuff. And like being in a union really taught me that of like the right ways to do it and what is just like common sense of what makes sense. Of course there are times where I'm like, especially in animation, I think like it kind of goes the opposite. But like there are times in animation where it's so slow where it kind of makes up for like if a week's a little harder, it's like, yeah, but like last week was like pretty chill. So it all kind of like goes somewhere. I'm pretty like even about that, I think I'm pretty good at relegating. But then there are times where it gets to like on the movie, we had like a month and a half of like 6-day week, 10 to 12-hour days. And it was like, just we had to grind. We were put in this position, unfortunately, by a lot of stuff I won't get into. But it is like, I was happy to do it. It made the movie great, but I'm never doing it again. It's like, I think I learned the hard way of just like, burnout comes for you whether you like it or not.
Yeah. One of my old editors, who also had young kids, he would kind of always just kind of say, like, look at the clock being like, is it past 5? Like, my brain doesn't work at full capacity past 5. Like, it was just kind of like within range of, and being honest about that, where it's just like, yeah, we are creative individuals, but we are human, and the batteries need to get recharged somehow. And, I think about that with my kids too, where like, you get into a point where they are cranky and not listening and not doing what you want them to, and then you realize like, oh, it's around time we should have a snack, and you feed them, and then they end up being like totally nice. And it's like, adults can regulate their emotions a little bit better, but like there's still a bit of like, if you push someone to go through lunch and they're starting to kind of, that happy, humble, gung-ho guy, like, is starting to be like, this is a stupid, just, starting to fall off some of that. But they're like, maybe you just gotta like, yeah, let him eat. So
oh yeah, well, and again,
credit where credit rules are there for a reason.
I was just like, credit where credit's due. It's like, I've been very lucky on my last show, Bat Fam. One of the best producing teams I've ever worked with, the 1-2 punch of Deb Arroyo and Angela Graham, shout out. They were very good at this. They would often like say these things before I even had to, of just like union stuff, or like they would be the ones to call like, oh, we're dipping into like a lunch break. They're making sure it's in the schedule. I remember we got to a point where on the movie, and then especially the show, I was just like, I went to them and I was like, this is not sustainable. It's not possible to hit these unless we have like, my co-editor and I have support. And sure enough, like they worked it into the bud. They like pulled whatever they had to do, and they were like, we were able to get you an associate editor. It really goes a long way to have like an incredible, production team, because that's a job I could never do, of having to like, be the in between of the studio needs versus like the human concerns. Anytime I get interviewed for something, I'm kind of interviewing, the director, the producers, or what I'm sussing out, is this like a position I want to be in, for the next 2 years. And I don't think like a lot of dumber producers I've talked to don't really seem to realize that it's like we're also interviewing them.
Yeah.
And it's like when you work with someone great like Deb and Angela, it's just like you want to like have more of that throughout. And then it's like if they like hit you up again, it's like, well, I know I'm going to do this. So it's like, I think it's also, if production people also listen to this podcast, I think it's an important thing to remember as you rise in your careers. It's like you're not just doing the interviewing. It's like people talk, there's like directors and producers I'm never going to work again, or I'll never work with because of what my friends have said. It's a small town. So it's like, it's important to like keep that good reputation. And so it's just like, I always try to make sure I shout out, like when I have really good like producers or directors or whatever, I really try to like go out of my way to sing their praises of like, yeah, they rule,
Yeah, learning red flags, and maybe even like talking to your peers and seeing what their red flags are, maybe kind of help create red flags for yourself. Sometimes it's clear and sometimes it's not clear what they want your role to be. Like some of the best, some of the easiest jobs that I've been hired for directly when I rolled off of Frog and Toad and I got hired onto the Sisters Grimm. They were told, here's this guy who just finished on Frog and Toad. It's an Apple series. Sisters Grimm was another new Apple series.
Word, yeah.
And they were like, oh, we just need someone who's like kind of been here before, has dealt with the Apple stuff, like deliverables and kind of
Warner very much
like
the
that.
same way. It's why a lot of Warner people kind of, or I've never been able to get into Titmouse. It's like when you get in, you're in, but it's like they like having people who know the workflow, know the in and outs, know all the executives, etc.
Yeah, and so like when I was interviewing, it was clear to me that this was less an interview and more a meet and greet to just like make sure that like, all right, on paper we should hire this guy. Let's just talk to him and make sure that we vibe, and we did, and then that was kind of clear to me. So I kind of felt pretty confident coming out of that like interview that they would offer it to me, and then also from what they were saying in the interview and from what I found out, that they're looking for someone who can use a lot of what I just did on this previous job and apply it to help guide them to what
Yep.
they need to be doing on this job, because the people who hadn't dealt with the kind of Apple pipeline before, and
Hmm.
I guess caveat for people who were less aware of final deliverables and stuff like that, where
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure how
you're
techie we were going to get on this.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
But
I've been
every
trying
studio
to.
is different. Like
Yeah, every
every
studio is
project's different. Every
different.
studio is different. You know.
You are usually finishing something and delivering it to a studio, but the tech behind it, the method, the format, the
Hmm.
package varies studio to studio, and especially with a lot of these new streaming companies and streaming services, and the tech-based ones like Apple and Amazon and Netflix have all developed their own proprietary ways of giving the final product to them to put on their service. And there's slight brush strokes of things that are similar, but then the fine points are always very different. Um,
Exactly. Or yeah, again, every studio has their own thing. Like at Warner Brothers, we had like it's called like a Harding test, where it's basically like
yep.
a strobe like kind of thing to like check. We kept getting like strobe things on Merry Little Batman. You know, like the intro of the Batman animated series where
Hmm.
there's like a bunch of lightning and stuff. I just put it in, and of course it failed Harding. And I was like, this
Mm.
is a Warner Brothers show. Like I know the times have changed and stuff, but we literally there's a moment in Mary. I did it because there's a moment in Merry Little Batman where we wanted the exact lightning hits on
Hmm.
Damian from that show. We have
Yeah.
so many references to Batman stuff big and small in that movie. This is on HBO Max right now, like this, and you're not taking it down. So what's the problem? This is like we're getting into the podcast where I just let it rip. So many studios now, it's like it feels like they're not as much run by creative people as it is just people who are good at reading Excel sheets. So
Hmm.
sometimes, and that's not what art is for. Art is supposed to go outside the bounds and stuff. So there were times where like Mike and I would advocate and fight for something of like, look, I know this is the standard, this is the default, whatever. Creatively, we want this. And I think all of our jobs, I know we work for executives or whatever, but really it's like I work for the director. I want to make this guy's movie rule. So how can I advocate for him? Sorry, I just thought of Harding and I just had all these flashbacks of like, we have to run it again?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a
No.
window opening. What's the problem? My wife gets epilepsy. She doesn't care.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Harding's a regular thing.
mhm.
Uh, yeah. Oh, there's all this QC stuff. Yeah. I mean, we don't need to
Oh
get
yeah, sounds
into
and they don't
all that
catch
kind of stuff.
everything. I was literally saying at lunch the
Yeah.
other day. There's three QC things that got missed on Merry Little Batman. They're the bane of my existence.
Yeah. That's another thing. One of the big surprises to me, and this really only applies to, because not every editor does this final picture editing kind of color
Yeah, ours were done out of
stage.
color technically. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by how when you're in that mode and you're in that zone, you just start to train your eyes to catch these like mistakes, like, oh, this little pixel is broken in like in a little corner, or like
Hmm.
this person's arm layer goes in behind this
Yeah.
background image in a way that looks unnatural, and it's only 2 frames, but like you see a little bit of a flash and you're like, wait, what was that? And you stop and you page through.
It's things we used to
And
catch as kids in like Dragon Ball Z or whatever and make fun of. And now when I watch animated movies, I'll catch a lot of stuff and I try to let it go, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, it's an interesting part of the process, and it's sometimes a nice little like reminder that this is still a human drawn medium, or started from that way, and that like
Oh yeah,
mistakes are
sometimes you like
okay.
the imperfections. That's what
Yeah.
makes like art and why it makes AI garbage because it's just trying to make the most quote unquote perfect thing by aggregating all these other data points as opposed to just making something, tangible and like from your own experience.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to kind of add about animation editing in general before we start going into our next segment? Or
It's great. 10 out of 10. No, no. No, it really is. It's like some of the most creative freedom I've ever felt in my career has been in animation. Like I honestly like I feel more creative freedom in editing animation than I feel like I might have as a live action director in another life. So it is like if you're listening to this and it's a career path you're interested in, it's great. It's really fun. I did it's probably on YouTube still. I did like a conversation of like how animation editing movies are made and I've heard they use that at like Sony to teach people how to use Premiere now or whatever. But it's like there's so many more resources out there now than when I was starting. So it's like this is a tangible goal. I mentored this one kid once who he would like find like animatics from like regular show or whatever, screen grab them all, and then try making his own animatics. It's like you have all of the tools that Josh and I do. The first stuff I ever edited was like anime music videos and stuff, like as a fan. So it's like, if you really want to start editing, it's like Resolve is free, CapCut's free. It's like there are all these like tools you can use to like kind of start doing this. Like, don't let that barrier be an excuse to not like try doing this if you really love it. Because it's great. The best job in the world is like putting together a story through images and timing and sounds and getting to see someone react to it. It's truly the best. So if you really want to do this, like, do it.
We're going to get into Freak Out and Geek Out.
Freak or Geek.
Well, maybe I'll try to clip that and use that.
Yeah, you should make like some sort of like sound like Freak or Geek Out.
We'll screen test that and see how that works.
You're the editor. So, you add some sound effects in. Show me what you got.
Yeah. All right. Freak Out or Geek Out is where one of us talks about something that they're freaking out about or nervous about or anxious about, and talk a little bit about that. And the other one talks about something they're excited about and want some happiness and they want to share into the world. I think you have something that's a little bit kind of a hybrid you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I want to do a Geek Out, which is like a tooltip for people who freak out. Because I've lived with anxiety my whole life, and I've finally kind of found a system that works really well for me. And I've started being more like vocal about it, which was really like embarrassing for a long time. But now I've found like editors, especially, we all suffer from like some form of like anxiety or nervousness. It's like the human condition. And I think I used to fight it more, but this like method taught me like how to actually do it. It's called DARE, DARE. It's a book by Barry McDonough, but there's like a podcast and an app, and there's all these different tools. But the base of it is like DARE is an acronym. It stands for like diffuse, allow, run towards, or engage. So it's like diffuse, be like, oh, so I'm feeling anxious. So what? It's this thing. Who cares? Just minimize it. Allow, you allow and accept these feelings to happen. Anxiety is like quicksand. If you fight it, it's going to like sink you faster and make it worse. The point is to like, imagine it's like a barking, like screaming dog in your house and just being like, hey, it's okay. It's just the neighbor, So it's like allowing, accepting, run towards. It's like kind of bullying your anxiety of just like, no, do it. I want to feel hot and sweaty. I want to feel anxious. I want to have intrusive thoughts, And then engage is just move on, do something else. It's really that simple. I highly recommend. The book's super short. There's a podcast out there. The app is really great. It has like affirmations and stuff. But like, I struggled with anxiety for like my whole life, and I kind of just like buried it down, never talked about it, really tried to brush past it until I had this big thing with like burnout and all these other things where it was like I kind of had to just like reckon with it. And these tools were really helpful for me. So I know that's a little outside the script for like the 5th episode of your show, but for me, it's like if you freak out a lot about stuff, geek out by getting this book. It really helped me. And if I really have to do a tangible geek out, Nithia's got into second place for the mayoral race. So I'm stoked about that. Nice. But really the DARE stuff.
Right. Yeah. If you want to, we can put information on that stuff in the description.
I make no money from them doing shit or whatever. It's just like, it feels like a miracle drug, but it's like this, when I really started doing it, it's like, it's really changed my life in such a positive way. I can't recommend it enough for anybody who struggles with anxiety.
Nice. We're going to keep this non-traditional thing going, and
right.
I'm going to
do freak out for people who geek out?
No, I just had a geek out that I wanted to share. I think you kind of mentioned Steve Dildarian announced the new independent animated show called Fred Has Problems. I think it's just going to be on YouTube or something like that. Yeah.
Holy shit. Oh, I love it. For people that don't know, that's the dude who did Life and Times of Tim.
Yeah,
he did 10-Year-Old Tom.
Yep.
Dude, I had no idea about this. That's amazing.
Yeah, I just read it a couple days ago. He was a guest, a recurring guest in the season of Animals that I worked on, and some of the funniest, just like
coolest dude. I had a bunch of friends who were on 10-Year-Old Tom, and that was the one I was like, if I left Warner Brothers, it would be for like this or Clone High. So it's like I am a massive Steve fan. So he's doing so he's doing it like he's just going to produce it himself. It's just going to go on YouTube.
Yeah.
Cool.
That
makes so much sense that he was on Animals, and I mean that very positively. Like, it is a very similar like animation aesthetic, I think.
Yeah, there was one of my favorite scenes that I got to cut. It was the dogs episode in season 3, and Steve plays the security guard.
So you're not a police officer.
Right. Oh no, I'm sorry. You have a badge. I'm more of a security guard.
And it's one of those things where like the raw stuff of it was so great and so fun that like it was really like killing your babies when we were like trying to figure out how to trim it down to like the length. Like it was a lot
Oh
longer
yeah.
in the animatic, and we trimmed out a lot of good stuff. And
No,
I'm
Animals
excited to
always
see
kind
what
of
they do.
struck me as the same. I've wanted to talk to you about it more at some point, but it's like from what Neil told me, it was like he had so much creative freedom because the animation was so like
Yeah.
not crappy's the wrong word, but it was like very like reliant on like stills and just kind of nudging things or whatever. That it's like you really the sky is the limit for whatever you want to do. Like it really is kind of it was like a very editor driven like creative show, and it's like Animals always kind of struck me as a similar thing of just like oh you can kind of do whatever you want, you know.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, Steve, if you see this, like please call me. Like that is a dream show for me. But as a fan, I'm so because I didn't mention at the start of this, but you and I have two things in common. We're both Emmy losers, and we both spent time in the Harmon camp. So it was just kind of like you got like my raw reaction of like holy shit excitement like that doc did.
What did you do in the Harmon stuff?
So I was back when I was like 2021. I was a huge fan of Harmontown, and this
Mhm.
would have been the year that he was like fired and doing the tour of Harmontown. They were making
Right,
a
yeah.
movie, a documentary, and they were like, "Hey, does anybody want to try like filming it?" And supposedly I'm the only person that said yes. Like I'm the only person that reached out. So me and my friend did it in Austin, and it ended up in the documentary. And the big thing is like I leave this interview with Dan, and I just have this huge goofy smile on my face. Which for a while was embarrassing, but now when I see it and I'm like jaded and stuff, it's like, wow, that's like a kid like really getting to meet this person. It's like the first time meeting someone of like, oh, I could do this creative thing. And Dan's always been really nice to me over the years and stuff. So it was like, it was just kind of nice to like, I had this like kind of holy shit reaction on camera, and it's like, oh, I can still have this like energy and stuff about what we do is like, it's really nice to see.
Nice.
But yeah, Harmon's a G.
Yeah, like I said on the Harmon Quest episode, like I actually barely interacted with him. I think the most I interacted with him was he was doing a Facebook live stream while we were
cool.
doing season 2, and so he kind of came around the office and just was just like going to people's bays and being like, "What do you do? What's going on your screen?" and so whatever. And so like that interaction when he came into my office, I was an assistant editor at the time.
Oh,
And
word, yeah.
I think what he commented on was that I would color code my microphones, audio tracks.
Oh yeah, I
would
do.
color
I
code
still
each
do
of
the
them.
same thing.
Yeah. So it would just like look like a rainbow on my thing. So he made a comment about like the rainbow.
But I love all
yeah,
those.
definitely
Starfleet
for
people.
sure does not know
Yeah.
my name. Probably would not have remembered that I worked on Harmon Quest. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for being here and taking the time to chat.
Thanks for having me, Josh. And thanks so much for doing
this is
this
super
podcast
fun.
again. Like, I wish this had existed when I was in film school. I especially wish it had existed when I first started animation editing. So I think you're doing something really cool for people. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I love just getting to kind of geek. Yeah, this is another geek out about this cool thing we get to do. Because not a lot of people know about all that goes into it. So it's great to get in depth with people who are super excited about it. So just like you. So thanks again.
Hell yeah, man. Have a good one.